The construction of our new home started. My husband unfortunately lost his job. He had agreed to contribute half of the mortgage, even considering taking on part-time work, but ultimately did not follow through with finding employment. Upon the completion of our new house, my husband proposed something quite daring. I've chosen to gift this house to my lovely niece as a wedding present. If you disagree with my idea, we can simply purchase another house. We should end our marriage right away. Surprised by his secret, I quickly agreed to divorce if that's what he wanted. John grinned, believing he had succeeded. After swiftly filing for divorce, he inquired about the division of property, which caused a noticeable shift in his attitude once I revealed that I knew his secret. With the help of another person, his original plan veered off course, resulting in a remarkable turn of events. We had been married for 3 years. Next year, I will be celebrating my 30th birthday, and my husband, who is in his mid-30s, talked about the possibility of having children. Given the physical demands of childbirth and the unpredictability of our current health, I decided to have children before reaching my mid-30s and discussed it with my husband. He recommended taking time before starting a family. If it felt overwhelming, he mentioned wanting children but recognized that our current home was too small for a family, suggesting we think about purchasing a house. Raising children involves significant financial commitments, and purchasing a home may entail almost 3 decades of mortgage payments. By that time, my husband will probably be in his mid-60s and retired. I wanted to avoid placing any financial strain on our children. My mother balanced a full-time job with raising me, taking care of the house, and supporting my father until she retired. I always looked up to her and chose to balance work with taking care of the home. With determination, we meticulously planned for our home, selecting a builder and initiating our new home project. Luckily, we had some savings, so we opted to increase our down payment to prevent any potential mortgage difficulties down the road. Right when everything seemed to be falling into place, my husband's company went bankrupt, leaving him without a job or any severance pay. I asked him if there were any signs of the company's impending failure, but he snapped back, saying he couldn't have known since he wasn't an executive. One morning, he found himself unable to enter his workplace due to a notice announcing the company's bankruptcy the day before. It was a small company, and it appeared that the president and other responsible parties had disappeared overnight, without even leaving that month's salary. Considering the uncertain future, I proposed that we think about buying the house, but my husband was adamant about moving forward since we had already made significant progress. Because of his strong motivation to secure a new job quickly, I decided to pause the plan. He was hopeful about swiftly securing a new job. We chose to proceed with our plan after he landed a new job. He began frequenting the job center and eagerly looking for jobs online. My spouse also secured some temporary employment while searching for a permanent job, but it was on a call basis and unpredictable. His willingness to share the mortgage payments and dedication to doing so eased my mind, especially since my income was steady and we could handle things without his help for now. I've made the decision to proceed with our home project. So far, my husband may appear dedicated and responsible, but he has a peculiar obsession with his niece, the daughter of his much older sister. She became a mother at a young age, and my husband, who became an uncle early on, showered his niece with love and attention. Even though they lived far apart, during occasional visits, he would generously send expensive gifts and give her money that exceeded expectations. On one occasion, he even surprised her with a Christmas present of $1,000, which I thought was too much. When unexpected expenses arose, he chose to prioritize gifts for his niece over our budget, causing me to question his priorities. His kindness toward his niece often left me dismayed. Currently without a job, he didn't use our savings for his niece, but spent extended periods outside, supposedly looking for work, coming back home later than when he had a job. Although his enthusiasm to secure a job was admirable, he started to neglect our home project, leaving all decisions to me. He requested that I take care of all the paperwork, with the intention of having only his name on the joint ownership. I kindly prompted him to take an interest in our home, and he reacted with frustration, mentioning his exhaustion from searching for a job. I was concerned that he might later claim that because I made all the decisions, I should be accountable for the mortgage payments. When discussing payment arrangements, he preferred to maintain his personal savings until securing a job, focusing on future emergencies rather than immediate needs. He strongly suggested that I take over the mortgage payments for now, which seemed much more convenient for him than our original agreement. I asked him to sign a loan agreement for the duration I would be covering the mortgage, wanting to establish my position. He kept expressing his concerns, but eventually agreed when he understood that pushing him about his job search could cause problems. John has promised to reimburse me for half of the mortgage payments I covered while he was unemployed once he finds a new job. I managed to obtain his signature on the agreement and kept it safe in a place where he wouldn't stumble upon it. However, there were several occasions when the commitments we first made unraveled before our new home was finished. First, John, who had mentioned he would secure a job swiftly and wouldn't be selective, struggled to find employment as the completion of our new home neared. In addition, he turned down multiple offers from the temp agency he signed up with, providing different reasons. Hated the idea of supporting a husband who made no effort, so I pressed him to find a job many times, but he always dodged the issue, leading to more arguments. During this time, our new home was finished and prepared for us to move in. However, given the circumstances, the idea of moving in with John appeared challenging. Actually, I had collected different pieces of information since he lost his job, such as his ongoing struggle to secure employment. I have several things I'd like to confirm and discuss. When John was heading to the job center, I went up to him as usual. "Would you like to spend today with me?" I mentioned to him that there was something important I wanted to discuss. John attempted to steer the conversation away, emphasizing that securing a job was his main focus. He suggested discussing it later, pointing out that skipping a day at the job center wouldn't make a difference, especially since it was uncertain if he had any interviews lined up. I stood my ground, insisting that he pay attention to me. John made a bold statement. "A nagging woman isn't cute. You know what? Hey, I have something to share with you as well." I thought I could be patient, but since it's positive news, now is the perfect moment. My niece is getting married, and I've chosen to gift her the new home. We can divide the mortgage and continue making payments jointly. I was surprised by his generous gestures towards his niece in the past, but giving her a whole house, why did he decide on something so important without talking to me beforehand? This was the first time I heard about his niece's upcoming wedding. I haven't consented to this. Is this a decision you can make independently? Inquired further. After that, John threatened divorce if I disagreed. He mentioned the idea of constructing a new home, but there has been no progress so far. He was unable to find a job. However, he continued to make vague commitments about securing employment. Although his words seemed believable, his behavior did not align. I chuckled in amazement at his words, as I had already expected his outlandish idea of giving a whole house to his niece. That matter must be related, right? I was curious to see his reaction, so I asked him a lot of questions. "Are you kidding? Currently, I am not employed. You're generously giving your niece a house that still has a mortgage on it. Do you think she'd be pleased with that? How could someone think of giving away a house that we're still paying a 30-year mortgage on? Furthermore, presenting a house with an outstanding mortgage as a gift for a celebration appears to be transferring a significant financial responsibility, which is quite shocking. I'd also inquired about what this meant for our plans to start a family, considering we bought the house for when our family expands. John confidently replied to my questions, stating he wouldn't be affected by a divorce. He'd avoided answering my questions and only mentioned the possibility of divorce without providing any explanation. It felt like we were from different worlds, making conversation nearly impossible. There were several topics I had planned to talk about, but it turned out that John was more difficult than I had expected. I was considering discussing divorce, so I quickly agreed to his suggestion.
If you agree to my terms, including leaving the house and finalizing our divorce, I will listen to anything, John said. You can go ahead and file the divorce papers first. But I prefer to settle the division of property after the divorce is officially finalized. I also want to get ready for living on my own, so let's sort everything out once you calm down, I told him. John was amenable, stating he would adhere to my requests as long as he could initiate divorce proceedings right away. Actually, my intention to get ready for living alone was just an excuse. I have one more thing to take care of. I informed John that I required some time to get ready for living by myself as a tactic to delay without him catching on. After some time, I finished all my pending tasks and was just waiting for the perfect time to reach out to John. Then, maybe feeling a bit antsy or stumbling upon something, he reached out to me initially. How can I help you today? Why is our new home being listed for sale? That was meant to be a present for my niece, and it's something we both own anyway. He was upset over the phone, accusing me of selling our jointly owned home without his knowledge and refusing to listen to anything I had to say. After allowing him to express his feelings, I replied, I was aware that you were attempting to shift all the payments onto me. Did you actually believe it was still jointly owned? You seemed very eager to get a divorce. I assumed you would have double-checked that detail. When you requested joint ownership, it was arranged accordingly. But I decided to change the ownership because I was concerned that he would avoid payments and try to claim the house as his own. After the house was completed, he began acting strangely, believing he could keep his true intentions hidden. He adamantly claimed the house was for his niece, convinced that no one suspected him. I managed to pay off the entire mortgage using my savings. Little did John know, my parents had sold the land inherited from my grandfather to provide cash for a payment. My parents always preferred purchasing things outright instead of taking out loans, which they considered to be uncertain and risky. They helped me out financially so I could purchase the house outright. I had thought about taking their advice, but then John lost his job. Worried that his behavior might worsen if he found out about the money, I chose to stay quiet. Furthermore, I questioned whether he would reimburse me if I paid for everything. I refrained from informing him to avoid overshadowing my parents' kindness. John was very upset when he found out about the ownership change and blamed me for not keeping our promise about the house. Is the house still standing? Is it still intact and suitable for living? Don't worry about it if it ends up in someone else's hands. If you truly desire it, you have the option to repurchase it. I believe I had the freedom to make decisions about the house I owned outright, but residing in a home designed by an ex-spouse didn't sit well with me. John, feeling upset by my statement, asserted his entitlement to a portion of the proceeds as marital property. He requested a prompt share, ensuring to verify the exact amount later. I asked him to meet up, mentioning that I had more information to share. Arriving early at the agreed-upon location, I waited for him. When John arrived and started talking, I revealed something that caused him to stop speaking abruptly, the findings of a private investigator's investigation into his behavior. The report contained evidence of his extramarital relationship, featuring prominent photos of him kissing another woman in public, dining out at upscale restaurants, and entering hotels. It was mentioned that even though John had initially searched for a job after losing his job, he eventually started meeting the other women frequently, stating that he was single and having difficulty finding work because of the recession, which made her feel sympathetic towards him. He appealed to her sympathy and persuaded her of his financial struggles, which ultimately led her to provide him with financial assistance, behaving in a way similar to a con artist proposing marriage. I felt unwell upon discovering that he had intensified divorce discussions due to his frustration with various issues, such as the mortgage and his lack of empathy. The other woman was more accommodating and understanding, making it easier for him to control her compared to me, intending to replace me with her. The tale of giving the house was simply a strategy to speed up our divorce, an excuse he believed he could use if I declined. However, he was incorrect in believing he had influenced me. Actually, I was the one behind it all. I decided to hire a private investigator after noticing John's unusual actions and learning about his unfaithfulness. His reason for giving the house to his niece caught me off guard, but I had already made up my mind to divorce him when I found out about his affair. I wanted to chat about this issue with John before we settled into our new place. At first, I intended to talk to him about his unfaithfulness and let him know that I wanted a divorce. Despite his irrational behavior, I noticed he was unable to engage in a reasonable conversation. I chose to let him believe he was in control while I strategized my next moves behind the scenes. I confronted John with all the evidence I had gathered. "I have concrete proof of your affair. Given all this evidence, it's impossible to argue your way out of it. I will be seeking compensation from you. You were aware but chose not to speak up. What sort of person does that make you, choosing to remain quiet about your spouse's unfaithfulness? Hey there, was it you who betrayed me?" John's assertion of being a cherished husband was quite ridiculous, prompting me to scoff in response. He tripped over his words before reiterating his claim to a portion of the assets. That's when I decided to reach out to John's father as a final option. I let him know that John was requesting a division of assets. John began passionately explaining why I should include his father. But when I mentioned his father wanted to talk to him, he stopped abruptly. I handed the phone to John on speaker so he could hear his father reprimanding him. His father reprimanded him for his behavior, questioning how a man in his 30s could act so shamefully, and criticizing him for causing family breakdown while still demanding a share of assets. John has always had a challenging relationship with his father, finding it difficult to stand up to him since he was young. His father strongly dislikes dishonesty, especially when it involves hurting or deceiving others. After John proposed to divorce, I quickly reached out to John's father for advice, seeking assistance if I couldn't resolve it on my own. He encouraged me to leave my cheating husband and assured me he would talk to John. However, I had many things I wanted to say to John myself. Fearing he might run away if his father intervened, I chose not to speak. I wanted time after our divorce to coordinate with John's father and make sure John didn't find out about the house sale. Additionally, I wanted to clarify John's relationship with his niece and decided to call John's sister while John's father was present. I directly inquired whether her daughter had ever received expensive gifts or large sums of money from John, and she answered in the negative. John's sister noted that whenever John was invited to birthday parties, he always showed up without bringing any gifts, just inexpensive cars. My niece was completely unaware of the supposed marriage or the house gift, and she found it ridiculous and unwelcome. John's father and John's sister were also unaware of John's supposed affection for his niece. Where did all the money John said he spent on his niece disappear? John's sister proceeded to share important details about John's history. At the age of 20, he was detained during a police raid at an illegal casino. Confronted by his father's disapproval, John begged his mother to keep it between them, confessing to trading valuable items for money. Despite his pledge to stop, his addiction appeared to be pathological. John's father noticed some missing items from their storage and decided to address John's gambling habits while expressing concern for his niece. "Are you using your niece as a cover for your gambling? Despite being unemployed, you still engage in gambling." He instructed John to return home for a serious re-education, emphasizing that the asset division is not intended for funding bets. John reluctantly agreed to his father's terms, giving up any rights to assets and agreeing to provide compensation. Thanks to John's father's help, a lawyer he connected me with verified that John had given up his rights to any shared property, enabling me to obtain all communal assets. Moreover, Thanks to John's father's thoughtfulness, I was given a lump sum inconvenience fee from John, which was well above the standard rate. Initially, I felt anger towards John's affair partner. However, as the investigation into John's behavior extended to her, my feelings shifted. She thought John was not in a relationship and facing financial difficulties, so she offered him financial assistance despite her own money troubles. I realized she was also being manipulated by John. Even though she was tricked, she showed regret for the possible impact on my family and tearfully said sorry. She kindly offered a small sum of money as compensation, which I declined, grateful for her sentiment. I let her know that, as another victim of John's deceit, she might be eligible for some compensation, clarifying that when someone promises marriage while also making financial demands, it could be considered fraudulent. She promptly acted on this advice. During the confrontation at John's parents' house, when she accused him of using marriage as bait, John's father became furious. He recommended that she file a police report and insisted that John surrender himself right away, which created quite a stir. John humbly asked for forgiveness from his affair partner and his father, promising to return all the money he had swindled to prevent police intervention. His limited savings were entirely used up in repaying his affair partner and handling the damages, leaving him with no money. After retiring, John's father had ample time to keep a close eye on John, enforcing strict supervision that made a prison seem lenient. John's efforts to evade the surveillance were brief. He returned to his father's doorstep within 2 days due to hunger. John's father was upset by John's indecisiveness about staying or leaving, leading him to disown John and express his disappointment. Now that the house is sold and I have the proceeds, I'm looking forward to investing in some personal rejuvenation. I secured a top-floor apartment in a building I've always dreamed of living in. I look forward to savoring the view, indulging in delicious food, and cherishing the time away from John, recognizing the years spent together.